Hello and welcome to another discussion of Miss Austen. We are having so much fun getting to watch these episodes and then discuss them with you. So tonight it's all about Cassandra. What's happened? We left on a cliffhanger this episode, so let's discuss. Hi, welcome. My name is Melissa. I am the community manager for the Jane Austen Literacy Foundation. I am joined tonight by Mindy and Marigold, and we are going to talk all about what is going on in episode 2. There was a lot happening in this episode, so I feel like we're going to need to unpack some things tonight. All right, we will first get into our quick what was going on in Jane Austen's world or with her characters for the week. And we have what is happening this week in Jane Austen's life. In 1799, Jane Austen and her family arrived in Bath for a month's stay. So we have talked a little bit about Jane traveling around and where she was going and was it giving her inspiration for writing. So I think it was fun fact that they happen to be in Bath. And I always kind of tend to, you guys can tell me if you do the same. I kind of always tend to think of her in the 1800s. So when I see those times of what she was doing with family in 1790s and whatnot, it reminds me like, oh, it really was a long time ago that Austen was living. And I think possibly for us being US readers as well, it kind of is interesting to think of what was happening in US history and how young we were as a country while Jane Austen was living over in England.
A great pick for this week, by the way, Melissa, because it pairs so nicely with the Austens in the book, Myth.
I'm trying. All right, so let's review what happened in episode 2. Just a quick recap. We see lots going on with Cassandra. We'll kind of discuss and we won't get into all the nitty gritty of what was going on. But this episode, I felt like really focused on the flashbacks a lot more than we even had last week in episode 1. How did you feel the same, that we were really going like, I feel like back and forth in this one?
Yes, you can get
Well, just a quick reminder to our viewers, if you haven't watched episode 2 yet, we are about to spoil everything.
Thank
So,
you. Yes.
so please come back and join us.
Thank you.
Come back and join us later.
Save the video. Go ahead and click like, subscribe so you get notification, and then come back after you watched. Marigold, you were saying you did feel like it was a bit also back and forth with the.
I was gonna say you're gonna get whiplash because you just go back and forth. And I do remember the back and forth in the book, but I didn't feel like it was like that fast. I felt like there was a more transition and slower time in the book. So I was like, was it me or was it like they just really, again, they're cutting things down for a show, so you understand, but it was just so much so quickly.
Absolutely. Mindy, how did you feel about it?
Well, what we saw in episode 2, I was actually surprised by some of the changes. And I know we're going to discuss those in just a moment. But for me, I think I mentioned this last week when they changed the timeline from the 1840s to the 1830s. We discussed why. Why would they have done that? What prompted either the screenplay writer or the director to change by a full 10 years? And so because those alterations were made, I feel like we see some of that, the other changes that had in order to stick with the book in this episode, especially with the pieces and parts about Cassandra getting ill at the end. I am excited to see what comes next.
It was pretty intense ending to this episode. I feel like episode 1 and 2 kind of like left us hanging a little bit, but like things were slowly rolling out. And then this one was like intense cliffhanger, like mid-scene almost. It felt like it cut.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So I had a little list, and I know you guys also take notes while you're watching, so we might have some things to compare about it. But I wanted to talk about, was there any moments that really jumped out to you as you were watching? And one of the first things to me was, and I think we have it coming up later in the quotes, but that juxtaposition of the kind of need for stability and lack of control, always kind of warring with each other. And just again, we talked about this, I think, in last week's episode, the women having so little say in where they were going. And there's kind of that moment when Cassandra's like, we need to figure out what you're doing with your life and where you're going. And it was almost like this, I don't want to think about it, and I don't want to, because if I don't think about it, don't have to deal with it. Was almost the way that it came across to me. Um, and I just thought, like, what a scary thing to not know. And then I saw that kind of as a reoccurring theme throughout the episode of Cassandra being kind of passed around as the childcare person when you didn't want to look at your own kids. And it made me think of, like, how does it translate to today? And I thought of all the times when you go to functions, and maybe this was more so when I'm a child and it doesn't happen as often today, but like you always think of those aunts that maybe weren't married. It was like, oh, you can sit at the children's table when we don't have space. It's still, I feel like, kind of a a womanly thing that if you're not married, you kind of lose status. And I mean, I was growing up in the 80s and early 90s, so I don't know if it's as prevalent today. I don't have like the same big family gatherings that I'm going to that I did back then. But I feel like it was always kind of like, you can go sit with the kids, you can take care of the kids. And that really stood out to me in this episode. What did you guys think about that?
Meryl, what did you think?
I was annoyed.
You know,
I thought they were being nice, having her come over, and once that her sister-in-law was like, oh, just like, oh, you don't want to go outside for a walk. I'm like, oh, yes, she does. But I was glad that they showed like that she had talked to Jane about it, and Jane had come up with this idea to get her out of there because it was just like being used, and especially when she couldn't go to the dinner. Like I was just like, that is so horrible. It really annoyed me.
yeah. Yeah. Like a prisoner of your own situation.
Absolutely. Like it was her choice or something. Oh, I just don't want to go out and do things. It just was like pushed upon her. And I just thought that was horrible.
Can you imagine standing there and somebody else saying to somebody else what you want and don't want? Like,
Absolutely.
I can't imagine. And you can't really speak up for yourself because it's literally the roof over your head. So you have to, like, I feel like it was a time you had to be very political with your dealings with people and keeping the peace and like damage control of the relationships. It felt exhausting almost, in a sense.
Absolutely. Because she didn't want to seem ungrateful. I liked how at the end she was like, oh, I'm very grateful. I'm like, why? They're using you. It's like worries. Like she still had to make sure she was like, I'm very grateful. Thank you for that. It's like, all right, that wouldn't stand here, but okay.
That scene when the sister-in-law is like, I think I'm gonna go lay down before dinner, and you see her walking off, and I was like, I hope she was like shaking her fist at her behind her back. Mindy, what did you feel about that? Did that stand out to you at all?
Well, I know last week I mentioned that I really hoped they would insert a scene that would have come from the book where Cassandra is reading aloud from Jane Austen's Persuasion to Isabella. And they did put that scene in, but I felt like maybe because I was looking so hard for it, in this episode, I really noticed how much Cassandra's own story mirrors Anne Elliot's.
Mm,
And the instances you were just talking
yeah.
about where Anna's passed from here to there, and she always has to be so grateful. And oh, Anna's such a sweetheart. She'll do A, B, and C, simply because we ask her. I
Yes.
I see that reflected in Cassandra's character. And I know you both love her, so I wondered if you saw the same elements.
It actually made me think because San has Persuasion was her last novel. It made me think if that was where she was getting that, was watching her sister be that doting. I mean, even for herself, she was always there for her, but like taking care of all the family. That's exactly where I thought, I'm like, I wonder if that's where, because she got things from her life. I wonder if that mirrored her.
Absolutely. And you're going to hate me for saying this, but I feel like the Netflix Persuasion, I don't know how to explain this up, but I feel like it captured that element of what was going on inside. Like, we assume that because on the outside, these women are so genteel and they're so meek and passive and they're doing everything that they're supposed to do, that they weren't internally raging at the things that they were doing. And I mean, I know obviously the show, shows her day drinking, but to me, that's like, if you were taking a literary criticism class and you're kind of looking at these like symbolism between things, it's like a symbolism of she's trying to cope with the life that she is in and finding ways to just get through the day. I don't think it was necessarily about like the drinking itself, is the way that I kind of view that movie. And so I think perfect analogy, Mindy, that this really shows that that comparison to Anne and what was going on in Anne's life and what was going on with Cassandra, and um the point in the end where they have the scene like right after she's been reading aloud and she was like, oh, let's talk about, like, there was a love triangle kind of thing, and she just shuts down. And I kind of picture Anne with Wentworth when they're like, oh, he's coming to town, and she's like, yeah, we're not even talking about that at all.
Oh,
Of the way like Cassandra was like, nope, that chapter is done and over. And I feel like Anne, until we get further into Persuasion, doesn't really even give herself hope that it's going to be going anywhere. And I feel like the Cassandra we see later in life is like, I'm shutting that down. Like, there was no hope for that.
yes.
I can see that. Yeah.
And the scene with the yellow dress. Let's take a moment and talk about that. That was such a difficult part of the show to watch. Because I felt so sad for her past, and you could like understand that like first love and only love kind of spirit, but then she was so young, and to not like open herself up to, the possibility of someone else. And I thought how their mourning was so outwardly portrayed. I felt like it would be really scary, because it's like not just mentally do you decide, oh, I'm ready to date somebody else, like in modern terms. It was like signaling to the rest of society that you are shifting and changing your place that you are at. And I was curious of why they chose yellow. That was such a bold color change.
I'm so glad that you said that, Melissa, because in the reading and the research I've done during that time, yes, they wore the black, right? They had the full morning dress, but they were supposed to kind of gradually ease out of that, where it would go from wearing the full dress to wearing the armband to wearing soft gray colors, muted kind of neutral tones. And then we work our way into maybe like some pale greens or something. But to go from stark black to beautiful buttercup yellow was a massive leap. And so I guess, I'm with you that it was a bold choice. One, I'm not sure Cassandra would have, even though she liked the dress, right? Like we saw her in the shop admiring the fabric. I don't done that if the others hadn't gifted it to her.
Yes. Or I was wondering if it was almost a visual choice for filming, because it comes across as so distinct from black to that. Like I know in the Victorian era, they would go to like lavenders and, like you said, the soft grays, like more transitional colors. But it was like how last week we were talking about the choices of the teal kind of color dresses. For striking the yellow felt again as like a bold choice to make.
Definitely. And we did see a lot of those teals still. There's like this undertone and these tints to a lot of the filming that has that teal. I thought that was
I
very
wonder if they're inspired by her ring and that's why they're pulling that color in. That was one thought that I had.
that is interesting. I wonder if like there's only certain parts. Now I'm going to want to go back and check to see if it's like when maybe they're only doing it on the flashbacks. I'll have to check that.
I definitely feel with watching this episode that I'm going to want to rewatch and like take it slower and take notes from it, because I was talking with Mindy before you jumped on Marigold, and I was like, I'm so confused this episode, because I feel like there's so many women that all look very similar, and keeping the names straight with everyone, I was like, I need like a family tree drawn out as to who is who. Because as we get more characters and they're moving between houses, I was getting a little lost. But that is kind of interesting to the. I mean, I think a lot of people probably dressed really similar in this time period because they didn't have a ton of choices for their fabrics and whatnot. So yeah, I need name tags. I guess is what I was
Agree. I have a hard time. Like, I don't remember the sister's name. So I'm like, now I'm thinking when we watch it, like the sister in the morbid house versus the one that's the nurse, the teacher that was helping the doctor. Like, I like describing words because I don't remember all.
exactly what I yes. I was telling Minnie the same thing. I'm like the lady that was here and in this scene. Um, but yeah. And the only other thing, and please tell me if you guys had anything else. The couple of points that I made were, it really struck me in this episode that marriage was a type of status symbol and delivery from the lack of control as well. It also, like, not just Cassandra's time of being shuffled around to people, but everyone that's married had this air, the women almost in this episode come across as like an air of I'm better than you. Like the episode with the dog of like, I want the dog out of here, I'm gonna go lay down and take a nap. And it's like, you don't deserve to have the same air of freedom as I do. And that also really jumped out at me.
I think you hit that nail right on the head because, but I'm not sure if that is so much marriage or if that's just Mary Austen because I haven't read enough about her, but certainly in this episode and in the book, of course, she's just atrocious. I'm not sure how much of that is true though.
So she does remind me of isn't it Mary Musgrove and sister? That's in Persuasion, the hypochondriac sister.
Yes. She's
She
very, but I
kind of
don't remember her being so obnoxious. I mean, she was
not as obnoxious, but the
yeah,
name Mary kind of gave me like a
yeah,
little sense of the similarities, like similarities, but a little tie there between the two of them.
absolutely. I thought the same thing when she was like, oh, her foot had to be off, but it had to have that pillow, and she wanted the blanket. And I was like, oh my goodness.
And what is it Elizabeth, the older sister in Persuasion? When she says like, "Oh, you need to go visit because nobody needs you here for anything," you know, like now she sends her to Mary. So these little bits, even I think that Jane was putting in her books, gives us maybe this sense of how she was feeling, or she was seeing Cassandra being sent to these other places and being used for, um, you know, help to make other people's lives easier. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and I really loved the part where it's almost like Jane being her ambassador to help her. Like, we really need to get her out of the situation and somewhere better. Um, and that scene in the carriage where she just gives this kind of sigh, it almost felt like a burden being taken off of her. Not that it didn't come across that she loved the children, but that also she was trying to kind of hadn't didn't have a moment to breathe. It was like the way that that scene came across to me.
Absolutely. Plus, I love the next scene when it's the screaming while they're giving birth, and I'm like, well, she went from what to
Exactly.
there. I'm like, I don't know how much this helped her, but okay.
Exactly. Did you guys notice anything big changes between the book we talked about a little bit last time, but anything that jumped out at you?
I think the big change, and we're about to talk about it in a couple of slides, but the big change is, in the book, Cassandra kind of falls ill naturally, sort of due to old age and wandering about in the rain and maybe overexertion. But here we see the potential for her to catch diphtheria. And that struck me as something that was very different. Was
Yes.
there anything else you all noticed?
I wasn't sure if it was from being exposed or if it was her trip in the rain. So I think it's interesting. We'll see how what they decide they're going to have her do in the show versus the book. But I thought it was very different.
I would agree. All right, diphtheria. Hey.
And you all know how much I love reading about medical instances, especially from long ago, before we had the modern medicine. So I just took a couple of notes on diphtheria and I have dropped them here because I feel like when you're watching a show like this, it helps to have some knowledge about what you're seeing. And so just a quick recap, the bacteria that causes diphtheria is spread through respiratory droplets. So when Cassandra comes into the room and Dr. Littledale is there, and Miss Beth is nursing the patient, Mrs. Winterbourne, and Mrs. Winterbourne is coughing and hacking, and both of them say, get out, you can't be here. It is because diphtheria is spread through that cough and that wheeze. And also, according to my research, it not just because it floats in the air, not only can people catch it that way, but the bacteria can also attract itself to objects.
Oh,
So yeah, so like if she had touched a surface or something inside that room, there would be the potential to pass it that way.
right.
The symptoms include having a sore throat, fever, and a case of the chills, which I think we get that impression at the end of this episode where Sandra is suffering from those. Diphtheria can be deadly if not properly treated. And then, of course, in the early 1800s, where we are, this condition was common because of the poor sanitation and the squalor that made up these living conditions. And I didn't put this on the slide because I kind of read it separately later, just because I was curious, but we definitely see at the end of the episode where Cassandra's face and on her hands, there's a red rash, right? Did you both catch that?
I didn't catch it on her hand, but I did remember seeing, I was like, I should need to stop back and go back, but I didn't. But I remember seeing it on her neck.
Okay, well, I did look that up because, it wasn't listed initially in that set of symptoms. And I thought she have something else, but apparently there is a strain of diphtheria called diphtheria cutanea, which of course then applies to the skin. And it is just a smidge different. It's spread the same way, but it does cause lesions on the skin, which can lead to a red rash and blisters. So I thought, definitely when you're creating something for television or for a movie, you try to show something so the audience has an indication.
Excellent.
So I thought maybe they created that rash to kind of give us the idea that she was catching something.
Yeah.
Definitely.
You were our Regency WebMD. Thank you, Mindy. I feel much better educated around diphtheria, and I will be on the lookout for it. What did you love? Do you guys each have one thing that you really enjoyed in particular about this episode?
I have one. I'm just gonna jump in.
Yeah.
I loved the introduction of Mr. Henry Hobday. He is all kinds of adorable, and I just wanted to eat him up. So
I kind of want him to have a spinoff.
yes, that's me too.
Very well. How about you?
I liked that Jane was looking out for Cassandra. So we always know that Cassandra is taking care of Jane. I liked this kind of switch where she wrote to Izzy or who was giving birth and saying, we need to get her out of there. I think it was just a great way of saying it wasn't just one way. Cassandra wasn't always just taking care of Jane. They were really taking care of each other.
Absolutely.
How
And
about-
I
about you,
love the wallpaper. I don't know. There was a few scenes, and I was like, it was when she was like taking letters in and out of drawers, and there was this red 12 wallpaper behind it, and I had to pause and look at it, and I was in love with it. I was like, ooh, I would love to have that on my walls here in my office. So that's what I wanted to rewatch and go back through and like really dissect the scenes and see what they did. Like even we talked about how they have the remastered version of Pride and Prejudice 95 and how you can really see the jewelry and the hair and like the makeup that they did so much clearer. And so I feel like this I've been kind of watching through this time, listening for bits for us to talk about. And I want to rewatch and like focus on the visual side of things next time.
Well, when you do rewatch, Melissa, please grab some screenshots of the beautiful wallpaper or anything like that that stands out to you, and maybe we can talk about that in the future.
Yes,
That'd be great.
absolutely.
Absolutely. I always like furniture. I love looking at the furniture they include in these places because I want a new chair, so I'm looking for something like vintage. I always look for like different styles. I'm like, what do they have? But
Good
yeah,
segue. I will say I was surprised by the lack of throw pillows when she wanted to prop her leg up. I was like, they're like suddenly looking around like, how do you not have like 10 throw pillows on your cushions? Clearly, their decorating style is much different than I have in my house. What
Uh,
surprise.
I don't have any throw pillows, so
Sort of world.
yeah,
My
we don't
cats would
either.
be appalled to come to your house. You need 10 throw pillows.
Any surprises for you, Marigold?
I'm trying to think if there's anything surprising. The going flashbacking fast was like the real little shock part for me because I was like, wait, I just couldn't remember if it went that fast in the book. So I was pretty surprised when we stopped to look at it. I'm like, I do not remember being this quick. So that was
Yeah.
surprising for me.
Mindy, how about you?
You know what? I'm not coming up with any surprises off the top of my head this time around.
We'll move on to some locations. These are surprising. I thought it was fun. Mindy did a fantastic job for us and put together some of the locations that they were filming at. And it was a really fun. I was waiting to see if they were going to pop in a Mary Anning. I always say her last name incorrectly. That was the kind of, she did a ton of work around discovering fossils. We read the book about her way back, and I think I recommended it to both of you because you love dinosaurs so much. Um, so I'll share some recommendations. I'll remind you of those. But I thought maybe they'd have her make appearance in this episode. But not yet. Maybe in the next one we will see. But they were at Rye, East Sussex. I love this picture. It's such a great one, Mindy, that you took of Jane. We have Camber Sands, East Sussex. And I love how we can see the detail on her outfit. And
Yes.
one thing I really like in their casting of Jane, she's so slender, and almost gives like a frailty a little bit to her, but then her personality is so powerful. And I love the kind of contradictory things between the two that we have. We have Inglefield House, Berkshire. Look at those houses behind. Oh, and I can't help but not stare at the bonnets and the collars. We have Adwell House in Oxfordshire. So we're really getting around here.
Yes.
This feels like, is this the same house that the 2005 Pride and Prejudice was filmed at?
I thought the same thing.
It feels very much like
The
that.
doorway looks so much like
It does. Yeah.
It could be similar-ish houses, but
yes.
immediately it makes me think of that.
I couldn't find where this is because it looks as though there were a lot of places in and around Oxfordshire where they just kind of went locally and
Yeah.
filmed anything that sort of hit the
Get
spot
vibe.
as far, yeah, exactly. It had the vibe and they were like, oh great, this is the exterior.
Yeah. Yeah, we have Chawton House, where Caroline Day Knight, our founder of the Literacy Foundation, grew up until she was 18. So that's really fun to see. And then we have a few great graphics here. This was the quote that I was talking about. There's nothing more unsettling than insecurity. And again, even this scene, you just get the sense that, like, don't want to talk about it. Moving on, we're not going to think about the fact that I'm going to have nowhere to live in a few weeks.
I think it's funny that you interpret it that way because I think if Isabella had been the one to say that, I would have come up with the same interpretation as you. But because Mr. Litterdale said it, I view it from his perspective. Like, even though he's trying to provide comfort for Isabella, I view it from his perspective. And I really don't want to spoil for other people because we know what's coming as far as their storyline goes. But I sort of thought he was speaking from his own experience where he's got that insecurity about feelings and what's going to happen with them.
Yes, I think they both have like a different place where they're at with it right now, and where they're at. So yeah, we will see how that plays out in the next two episodes. And then I must share it with you, though it is not my secret to tell. My sister, my beloved sister, Cassie, is in love. Sorry, it's covered over on my thing, so I can change the slides there. And that was kind of a really pivotal part. We don't have so much dialogue around that, but we really see Cassandra being like going back and forth, like you said, Marigold, so much, but like reliving these moments, and it almost felt like it was kind of emotionally overwhelming for her.
Well, I think it's so telling that it's Jane who we're constantly pointing out is such an excellent observer of human nature. So it comes from Jane's pen that Cassandra is in love rather than Cassandra having that moment of realization.
Yes.
We have our third party observer who says, "Oh, yes, of course she's in love."
All right. And then we have Mindy, do you want to go ahead and read our log line for this week?
Cassandra's determination to keep Jane's letters private is joined by a second objective, securing a home for Isabella. After a trip to town, Cassandra falls ill, and the past comes crashing in with her recollections of the difficult years. I've been including these at the end of our episodes because I'm so fascinated by how whomever is coming up with these log lines, because they're not entirely accurate as far as what's happening in the episode. For instance, in this one, they reference Cassandra falling ill, but really that didn't happen till what, the last minute and a half,
Yeah.
Are they trying to grab you?
Yes.
I was gonna say they're really leading us into the next episode. They're telling us what happens. It is so hard. Like they literally condense a whole episode down into, it's not even 2 sentences, it's one. Oh no, it is. Okay, we have a period after. We have a colon, we have periods. Like we're having a lot of information in here. But yeah, the falling ill really does leave us on that, like what's to come next for her and where are we going with the story. All right. Join us next week. Marigold, what do we have coming up next week for our episode here?
Oh, this way it says, delirium, Cassandra guards Jane's letters from her sister-in-law, Mary Austen, which, let me tell you what, all I could think of when she fell, I know, another spoiler, but when she collapses, the drawer is not closed. And all I could think of is, you should have shut the door.
I was screaming at her to get up and close it.
Oh my God, Mary's going to come in. She's going to see the open drawer. She's going to take the letters. I'm so freaked out. I hope not, but I mean, obviously not. We know.
I know. I'm hoping somebody, when they come and they're like, no, we don't need the doctor, we're going to figure this. And I was hoping somebody just pushes the drawer closed.
I know. Like, get in there.
Well, unless I'm misremembering, Dinah take the letters?
Did what? You cut out.
I'm pretty sure Dinah takes the letters, doesn't she?
Is she? Okay. I think something had to do, because I remember like them going missing.
Yes.
Okay. I wasn't sure if she had misplaced it. I could not remember that part of the book, and I was like, "This is how it happens." I know it.
I feel like in the book, Dinah actually digs them out from underneath the mattress. So, in this instance, she wouldn't be snooping as much.
The drawer is open.
Just getting in the drawer. It makes it easier visually for the audience to see, and it also leaves us with a cliffhanger feeling.
Of course, they got to give me anxiety at the end. Even though I know what's happening, I have to have anxiety. Thank you, people, for help.
And for our mini book club selection this month, we are reading Longbourn. So if you need a little bit more Jane Austen with a twist, just like if you're like Miss Austen is a bit of a twist, there's little bits of truth. Longbourn has little bits of Pride and Prejudice thrown in there, but it's definitely its own spin on the story. Come and read that with us and join us in the community over on Patreon, where we will be discussing the book for our next book club. Oh, that was a lot to get through this week. I feel like there was so much happening in episode 2. I can't imagine what 3 and 4 is going to bring us. We're going to be whiplash, as you said, Marigold, going back and forth in time. Where are we at? Where are people? What are we doing? Even keeping track of whose house we're at is starting to get a little bit laborious.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, until next week, have fun, happy reading, happy watching episode 3. We will be back next week with all the spoilers, as Mindy reminded us. And we will have fun discussing it with you. Let us know your thoughts on the episode as well down in the comments. We'd love to hear what you guys are thinking. If there's anything you think we didn't touch on that really stood out to you for the episode, let us know, and we can always wrap it into next week's conversation as well. So we will see you again soon. Take care and bye.